and uploaded to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. Therefore, by participating in this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings. If any public speakers on MS Teams do not wish to have their image captured, they should ensure that their video setting throughout the meeting is turned off and set to audio only. Members and public speakers are reminded to turn on their microphones before speaking and turn them off when they have finished. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of Planning Committee A. I'm Steve Heather, I'm the chairman for this evening's meeting, and to my right is my vice chairman, Councillor Lyon. To my left, we've got Kelly Sweeney, who's Principal Planning Officer, Mohammed Rahman, Senior Planning Officer, Graham Courtney, Assistant Director of Planning, Karen Luxton-Walsh, who's the Legal Officer, and Matthew Lane, a Highways Officer from, I assume, Essex County Council. And on Zoom, we'll have joining us Suki Dadwar, who's Principal Planning Officer, Trevor Baker, Land Drainage Officer. And further to my left, we have Teresa Larson and Matt from Democratic Services and Natalie, who's conducting the webcast. Public speakers, you should have been briefed by Democratic Services before this, but advice is on pages 3 to 4 of the agenda. Apologies for absence.
We have one apology, Chairman, Councillor Will Kaufman.
Thank you. Substitute members.
We have Councillor Bedford that will be substituting for Councillor Lyon on one of the applications.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest, members?
Just on the first point, the Tudor House development, I've previously been to see that on a site visit to look at GS8 properties in Walthamstow. That's it.
Good. Right, members, with your permission, I'd like to alter the running order of the agenda tonight. So take agenda item 8 first, followed by 7, then followed by 6. We've got quite a bit of public interest, and rather than keeping people out until the middle of the night, so if we take what would appear to be the longest ones first. Thank you. At this point, we've got planning application EPF 094224, and I believe my vice chairman will now have to step down as his ward member. And can I nominate Councillor Bassett to become my vice chairman for this item?
Thank you, Chairman. And Councillor Bedford is substituting for me.
Thank you.
All change.
Thank you. Are we all sitting comfortably? Thank you. Right, so agenda item 8 then is planning application EPF stroke 0942 stroke 24, land west of Frog Hall Lane, Chigwell, on pages 92 to 133 of the agenda. And to take us through this is Kelly Sweeney.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening to members of the committee. Agenda item number 8 relates to land west of Frog Hall Lane. So here we have the site location plan, and the area highlighted in red is the application site. As you'll see, there's a thin access from Mount Pleasant Road to the west. Here we have Frog Hall Lane to the east. To the north, we have Chigwell Cemetery. Here we have the railway line, which is served by London Underground. And you will see that it's predominantly residential to the south and to the west. So I'll just take you through a couple of site photos. The first picture here is taken from within the site, looking southwest. This photograph here is taken from within the site and is looking across to the Roden Valley. The photograph at the bottom here is showing a view across to the site from the train station. This is a photograph taken from Mount Pleasant Road, and this is a view of the site taken from Woodland Road. So this slide is a screenshot taken from the Council's adopted local plan. It's an extract showing the site allocation for the site. The area etched in yellow is the area subject to the site allocation and this planning application. And you will note that there's an area surrounding the site that is covered in green. This is Metropolitan Greenbelt. Part of the site, the thinner area here, is within the Metropolitan Greenbelt. However, the larger, generally square area is not located within the Greenbelt. In terms of the site allocation, it's allocated for residential purposes, particularly for specialist or retirement homes, with an approximate net capacity of 105 units. Now, there are a number of site-specific policy requirements for this site, which include a need to pay due regard to the ecological value of the site. You will note on this application from the committee report that the development will deliver a biodiversity net gain of 20%, which is above the government's 10% requirement. Another site-specific requirement is that the design of the development should be informed by the Quality Review Panel. You will note from the committee report that the development was subject to significant pre-application advice, and the scheme was subject to 2 QRP meetings, and amendments to the design and layout of the scheme have been made where possible in line with QRP comments. The architects in this case have designed the scheme to take into consideration the Essex Design Guide, and officers are of the view that the design and layout of the scheme is very successful. The next site-specific policy relating to the allocation states that this is a high landscape sensitivity area and development proposals should have regard to this. Members will see from the plans and information provided that it's proposed to plant more than 400 new trees on site and that a substantial visual buffer will be provided between the built form of the development and the open areas of greenbelt adjacent to the site. Lastly, a requirement of the site allocation is that measures must be adopted to promote sustainable transport modes and encourage active transport measures. The allocation notes the close proximity of the site to the London Underground station. And in this case, it is considered that an appropriate balance has been put forward by the applicant to provide significant levels of on-site parking, whilst at the same time providing and promoting opportunities for sustainable modes of transport. Members will note from the committee report that the applicant has agreed to provide a shuttle bus for residents, travel packs for all new residents and care staff with preloaded Oyster card for London Underground travel, and active electric vehicle charging points for all parking spaces. Moving on to, this is the layout of the previous application, which was refused by the South Subcommittee in 2022. So it's a 2018 application, but it was subsequently refused by the committee. There was a number of reasons for refusal on this one. The first reason for refusal stated that proposal would constitute inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. Since the determination of the last application, most of the site, as you will have seen from the previous slide, is no longer within the Greenbelt. As such, it's considered that this current scheme overcomes this reason for refusal. The second reason for refusal related to there being insufficient financial contribution towards on-site affordable housing. A viability appraisal has been submitted, and the Council have no grounds in this instance to seek an affordable housing contribution. Nevertheless, a £1 million affordable housing contribution has been offered by the applicant. As such, officers are of the view that there would be no grounds to refuse this application due to there being lack of affordable housing. The third reason for refusal related to there being insufficient on-site parking. In this case, the level of parking has improved, as has the offer in terms of sustainable transport measures. And it's important to note that the site has now formally been allocated for development within the adopted local plan, where there is a site-specific policy to limit on-site parking for residents. The other reasons for refusal related to planning obligations, and it is noted that there was no concern by the committee in regard to design, layout and the scale of the development. So moving on to this proposal. So here we have the site location plan. You will see here is the access from Mount Pleasant Road. The arrangement of buildings is surrounded by a sort of central core, where there would be landscaping and areas for residents to pursue various activities. The tallest buildings are in the middle of the site, so this contains the community block, where there would be a cafe, restaurant and wellness centre. Here we have the lower level development, so the cottages that would be 2 stories in height, and then the buildings around the periphery would be 4 stories in height. As you will see, the parking is arranged around the periphery of the development. I'll just take you through the key views of the development. So you can see at the bottom here, there's a block view showing an arrow. So this one is looking east to west. This next one is the first one was looking was looking from the west to towards the east. This one is looking east to west. And this one is a close view of the communal building. And here we have a typical layout of the internal arrangements of the apartments, and you will see that the flats are generally quite spacious, they have access to balconies, and each of the apartments are afforded adequate light and outlook. This is an aerial view showing the site from the east, and you will see that this is the access from Mount Pleasant Road. You will see from this diagram that there is a significant visual buffer between the built form and the surrounding landscape, and you'll also note that there is significant distances between the built form and nearby residents. In terms of concluding points, officers are of the view that this is a very well designed and high quality development in terms of its built form, detailed design and landscape quality. It is considered to be an improvement upon the previous proposal and would include biodiversity enhancements above government requirements. The development has been carefully designed to ensure that there would be no harm to nearby residents and that future occupants of the proposed development would benefit from high quality accommodation with access to large outdoor areas as well as community facilities, which would also be accessible to existing local residents. It is noted that significant concern has been raised by local residents on a number of matters, but mainly in relation to access and parking and a lack of affordable housing. With regard to access and parking, members are respectfully requested to consider the policy requirements of the site allocation, which specifically seek to limit on-site resident parking and promote the use of sustainable transport modes. Furthermore, due regard should be paid to the positive comments provided by Essex County Council Highways and the Fire Brigade, who raised no technical issues with the access arrangements for the site. With regard to affordable housing, it has already been established under the previous application that no on-site affordable housing should be provided. The financial contribution offered by the applicant of £1 million is a voluntary one, given that the viability appraisal submitted with the application demonstrates that the scheme is unviable. Whilst the Council's Housing Enabling Team requested the inclusion of a review mechanism within the Section 106, officers are of the view that there are no policy grounds in this case to require this for the reasons set out in the committee report. Since the publication of the committee agenda, attention is drawn to the appeal decision dated the 11th of November relating to the former Chimes Garden Centre, which proposed, amongst other things, a number of later living apartments and retirement cottages within the Greenbelt. This was allowed by the Planning Inspectorate. Of note, the Inspector in this case substantiates our view that there is no policy requirement to require a review mechanism within the Section 106. This appeal decision should be afforded significant weight by members, and comments made by the inspector in relation to the impact upon the green belt, the council's 5-year housing supply and the projected need for housing for older people should also be considered in relation to this application. In conclusion, it is considered that there are no policy grounds to resist this development and approval of this application is recommended.
Thank you. Right, we have a number of public speakers on this, and the first one is Bruce Medeiros in person. And where are you? Right, can I just remind you, you've got 3 minutes to state your case, and if you press the button at the bottom of the microphone to speak, and then when you're finished, turn it off.
Okay, thank you. My name is Bruce Medeiros. I'm a retired civil and structural engineer specialising in highway construction. I'm also an objector to retirement village development. I've been asked by residents of the 3 roads, Warren Court, Great Oak and Mount Pleasant to represent them at this meeting. I have a number of points to objections. There appears to be something wrong with the Epping Council planning portal. I was told by the planning department there were only 29 objections. In fact, there were 65 objections. Access to Mount Pleasant Road from the site is designated green belt, therefore it can't be built. I looked through the FOI 3705 and I didn't find any relevant information regarding the inspection questions to the RVG development. The inspection didn't have any questions because the site was not on the list for being assessed. The question I have is, how did they get inserted into the local plan without being assessed? I've been advised by reliable sources that the site should never have gone forward in the first place in 2016. The developer documentation doesn't include current traffic data, but it does include predicted traffic data. However, the predicted traffic data estimates there will be no increase in the ordinary good vehicles. This can't be correct. I'm sure the vast majority of the residents in the 144 units will be getting deliveries from the likes of Amazon et al. On a regular basis. I believe that if the developer was to undertake an accurate comparison of the current and predicted traffic, it would show a significant increase in traffic and would have a serious road safety problem. Woodland Road was constructed in the recent past and has been appropriate highway infrastructure at the junction of Manor Road. However, Mount Pleasant was constructed nearly 100 years ago and does not have the appropriate highway infrastructure at the junction of Manor Road. Driving in and out of both entrances to Mount Pleasant Road can be dangerous, and it would be more dangerous as a result of the extra 144 housing units. If one looks at the developer's plan and knows where the majority of shops are located, it is clear that the most traffic will use Mount Pleasant Road and not Woodlands Road. Mount Pleasant Road is already used for parking, and the road becomes effectively a chicane. With this present low volume of existing traffic, it's not a problem. However, with the unknown potential increase in traffic due to RVG development, this could result in accidents happening. Will Epping Council ensure that the developer will commit Epping's required levy of affordable housing? My concern is that there have been many cases where developers promise to build their required affordable housing allocation, but then renege on their promises and the respective councils take no action. If there were this extra 144 housing units, I don't think that the existing local services could be able to cope with the additional population when they can't provide for the current population. As 144 units will be consisted of retired couples, their demand on local surgery will be significant. In summary, there are lots of concerns from residents of the 3 roads who have serious and real queries about this development. For good reasons, the residents consider this development is flawed and dangerous as is currently planned and should not go ahead. We will continue to fight this. Finally, I have a responsibility to take answers back to those I represent, and I would like to know how my objections will be answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect timing. Thank you. Right, Owen. We now have a speaker from the Parish Council, Councillor Jeff Coate. Again, 3 minutes. Thank you.
Tonight we've heard this site is allocated in our local plan. It does indeed appear on the pages of the plan. However, what can't be explained is how it ended up there. The process behind its inclusion is either unknown or has been obscured, leaving many of us in the dark. Every site in any local plan is only there after a rigorous site selection process, a documented step-by-step review of various development factors. Throughout each stage of this process, potential sites are evaluated and most eventually excluded. By the end, after years of careful, independent and documented examination, the inspector, the public and the planners know that only the most suitable locations make up the sites in the local plan. Not here. After the Stage 1 assessment in 2016, this site did not progress to the next stage because the council advisors said the harm to the greenbelt if it was released for development was too high. Nevertheless, it was submitted again for review in 2018 and again rejected in the initial stages. Major policy constraints meant it could not or should not proceed to the local plan. Despite this, in 2018, someone writing the local plan moved the boundary to take this site out of the greenbelt and said it had the capacity for 105 units. This August, the parish asked the Planning Service Director of Epping Forest to tell us how it got in the plan. He told us that the planners cannot find why the site progressed, despite the site selection documents in 2016 and 17 and then 2018, concluding not to. In other words, planners apparently also have no idea how this site ended up out of Greenbelt and in the local plan. You'll maybe hear that the inspector didn't have a problem with the site. Of course he didn't. The inspector didn't know this site never qualified to be in the plan in the first place. If he'd been told, it would have been out very quickly. Officers may think this is well designed, but the Quality Review Panel don't. They still have issues about the design which keeps the biggest building at the top of the hills against their advice. The viability statement says the developer will lose 10 million. Instead, the developer is contributing 1 million on the condition their books are not later looked into at a late stage review. A much better deal than providing the 58 affordable units they should. The case for these 144 homes cannot be proved. There's no clear evidence that these homes are in the right location or that our infrastructure can cope. We have no GP practice anywhere in Chigwell and no explanation how hundreds more elderly patients will be treated. I expect our councillors will explain the robust planning reasons that there are for you to refuse this application. The access road from Mount Pleasant is inappropriate development in Greenbelt. The application doesn't comply with policy D1 for infrastructure delivery. The viability statement is unreliable at best. As you listen to Chigwell councillors and the other objectors, remember that the process here was flawed. The impact of adding 105, let alone 144, was never assessed. Because they deemed it too valuable as Greenbelt to develop, Epping's independent assessors never did proper infrastructure or capacity reviews of this site. Please consider how this application violates our local plan policies around infrastructure delivery, good design and Greenbelt protections. We urge you to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, our next speaker is the applicant's agent, Jamie Sullivan, in person. Again, sir, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening to everyone. Can you hear me okay there? Good. This application is an integrated retirement community, IRC, by Retirement Villages Group, RVG, a respected and experienced operator with over 14 successful IRCs nationwide. This application is important because Epping Forest population of those aged 65 plus will surge from 3% to 23% over the course of the local plan. This is the only site within the local plan that is allocated to help meet this acute need. The proposed 144 unit scheme will allow older residents to stay close to existing support networks, foster social interaction and free up housing stock for young families. Beyond addressing the urgent need for older persons housing, these new homes will help the council back on the path to being able to deliver a 5-year housing land supply. In terms of sustainability, we are committed to achieving whole life net zero carbon through integrated urban drainage systems, electric vehicle charging points and a shuttle service for local residents. The design aims to deliver 20% biodiversity increase, 400 new trees and a wetland meadow. Your officers have described this as a model of sustainability. Throughout the planning process, RVG have prioritised transparency and community engagement. We met with residents multiple times, hosted exhibitions and maintained open communication with elected representatives. This demonstrates our commitment to being a responsible partner and balancing stakeholder feedback. We do understand that parking and traffic are key concerns. Fortunately, residents of RVG schemes are less likely to travel at rush hour or even own cars in the first place. Even at the very peak times, our assessment shows that there is likely to be one vehicle movement every 6 minutes at either access, Compare this to a residential general market housing scheme, and you would see one movement every 30 seconds. In terms of parking, we've been directed to provide essential level parking only, and our data-driven approach from other RVG sites confirms we meet this expected need. We recognise the Council's commitment to affordable housing and are contributing £1 million towards this. This is a balanced approach supporting affordable housing objectives whilst acknowledging the economic challenges. In closing, this proposal frees up family housing, offers facilities open to local residents and meets this desperate need for this form of housing while significantly improving the quality of life of its residents. It focuses on a high-quality design, sustainability and a landscape-led approach. In every aspect, this proposal aligns with the local plan. I urge the committee to grant planning permission.
Thank you. Right, so this is the opportunity for other councillors as opposed to ward councillors, and I've got Councillor Sunga on Teams who wish to speak. Darshan?
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's only fair that the ward councillors for Grange Hill have the opportunity to speak. I know that Councillor Rashmi Holden is on, so I'd like to give way to the ward councillor for Grange Hill first, if that's all right, Chair.
Yep. Okay, then, so the ward councillors, Councillor Lyon.
Thank you, Chairman. I've heard the debate so far this evening and the presentations. This site has been ongoing for a number of years and is quite close to my house. It's quite a unique development. I don't think we've seen anything like this as a retirement village in Epping Forest at all. So it's quite unique, and it is quite interesting to actually see how that has been realised. There are...
Sorry. Excuse me. Excuse me. In the upper gallery, if you could be quiet, please. Thank you. Councillor Lyon.
Thank you. As I said, this is quite a unique scheme, and we need to take a balance or view on this particular scheme. I've had a number of objections. In fact, I've had 2 in the last day. One was the resident group, and one was a resident of Woodlands Road. And I think we've heard quite a lot of the objections from Councillor Jeffcoat, so I won't go through those again, but it's worthwhile just highlighting what has been referred to me. So inappropriate development in the green belt, and that's a consideration. Local plan, it failed at stage 1 previously. Density, well, I think we know about the density and what's been presented. Lack of infrastructure, transport, and I believe there is a minibus being proposed. One of the other things that was considered was the issues with Grange Hill Station. It doesn't have any level access, and that's worth noting. Design problems have been raised, although these were reviewed by a quality review panel, and the comments made about affordable housing, which may or may not be appropriate in this particular development. So those are the concerns, and I'll be very interested in what other councillors have to say. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan, you.
Thank you, Chair. So I have very deep concerns about this proposal. I feel that it's not compliant with the local planning policy in several ways. For example, the access road is inappropriate development in Greenbelt, which we've obviously already heard about, with no special circumstances. This is contrary to the local planning policy DM4 and the MPPF. But it's failure to comply with policy P7, section D, that really is harm not only to our current residents, but anyone living in this development in the future. The difficulties many elderly people to manage the 40 steps plus that we just heard about at Grange Hill Station. It's not accessible local transport, and it's not being picked up on anything by the developer, or not being asked to contribute towards providing level access to the station, or to contribute towards pedestrian links. But my biggest concern is there's no GP in Chigwell, and this proposal will do nothing to change that. According to page 18 of the officer report tonight, the healthcare contribution of £150,000 will go to Chigwell surgery. where is Chigwell surgery? We don't have such a surgery in Chigwell or anywhere else. There's no GP practice at all in Chigwell, and that financial contribution will go to other surgeries outside Chigwell, surgeries that refuse to take new patients from Chigwell. Our nearest GPs are in Loughton, Buckhurst Hill, or down the road in Redbridge. All of our surgeries in our Essex primary care network for Chigwell have closed their books to our patients from the Chigwell area. If you move to Chigwell and want to register with a GP, your only option is the oversubscribed practice down the road in Redbridge. If you want to change from there, you can't, because there's no choice in Chigwell, because we have no doctor's surgery. So therefore, this extra from 105 to 144 is 37%. There's no emergency call out from your doctor. Your doctor won't do home visits because we don't have a doctor in Chigwell. Policy P7, Section D of the local plan requires development proposals in Chigwell will be expected to deliver and contribute proportionally towards infrastructure items, including appropriate provisions of healthcare. This proposal is a clear breach of that policy. Worse than that, it's missed opportunity for residents in Chigwell who have this development foisted on them with no benefits. Already it's impossible to get a GP doctor's appointment in one of our GP practices in Redbridge, as well I know, because I am a Chigwell resident who lives opposite this development. This proposal isn't compliant with policy P7 of the local plan. Hundreds of extra elderly residents will not only compound the difficulties experienced by residents caused by this lack of healthcare infrastructure in Chigwell. We've heard this site was not properly assessed during the local plan process. If it had been, if plans had followed due process, the infrastructure issues would have been identified. Site-specific requirements could have been put in place, such as the provision on a GP for our residents in our area. But planners didn't properly assess this site. Nobody knows how it got into the local plan, as we've heard, and it being wholly unsuitable. The head of Epping Planning wrote to the parish on the 6th of August this year, as we say, and I quote, "We cannot find why the site progressed despite the site selection documents in 2016-17 and then again in 2018, concluding not to. Yet still, we have it in front of us. Our planners do not know how or why it was selected for the local plan. That is not good enough. I'm here on behalf of our residents, and the residents of Chigwell have already been let down by planners and have failed to follow the due process. There's no evidence that this site can support 105 new homes, let alone the extra 37%, or just over 37% for the 144. So I ask my fellow councillors to stand up for our Chigwell residents and refuse this application due to it not being compliant with policy D7 of our local plan. And while I'm on the subject, you did say that they were 4-storey, and actually, if you include the ground floor, they're actually 5-storey in some of your pictures. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you.
I'd just like to respond to a few of those points, if I may. So in terms of the Chigwell surgery, there is a surgery, I believe it's off Langford Way. So it's Chigwell Medical Centre that the in Fencepiece Road. So there is a medical centre with that name. The other thing that I was going to flag up is that obviously the material consideration in this case is the adoption of the local plan and the site allocation. You'll see from the committee report that the inspector did acknowledge the site and found that the allocation was sound.
Thank you.
Thank you. The Chigwell medical practice is actually in Redbridge. It's not in Chigwell. It's in Redbridge, and being a patient there, I can assure you, we have at least a 3-week waiting list at present before we have an extra, possibly 300-400 elderly people wanting to join that thing. It's not in Chigwell or in Epping Forest. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, our final ward councillor is Councillor Chahal Holden, joining us on Teams.
Evening, everybody, and thank you for your time, and thank you for the residents for actually coming today and putting your views forward. It was good to see your support on this. Look, I think most of the points have been made, and I'm not going to repeat them. And I think, you know, we see that there are significant failings in terms of some of the policies and gaps where we haven't actually had significant responses back in terms of why things aren't being met. The issue with Greenbelt needs to be addressed. We've got a road that's an access, and that's a significant issue that needs to be resolved and answered for. We've got issues around the design. It makes no sense to me why we would have the tallest buildings at the back where they're very visible. The Quality Standards Committee panel, they have actually said that that needs to be redistributed, and that has not been addressed. And that is a failing of the DM9 local plan. We have another retirement village just directly across the road, which, as far as I'm aware, has a number of vacancies already at that place. And that suggests to me that we probably don't need another retirement village in Chigwell. We should be encouraging younger families and a different demographic into Chigwell, and we should be looking at affordable housing where possible. And it's a failure that we haven't actually looked at that in this site. So I don't want to go on too much, but this is not a plan that gets my support, and I'm behind the residents of Chigwell on this one.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sunger, did you want to come back?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. And I'm not going to repeat what's already been stated. I'm a Chigwell councillor with neighbouring ward, Chigwell with Lambourne, and this certainly will have an impact, push-pull effect on our residents in my ward in Chigwell with Lambourne. As far as I remember being a councillor, this particular application was in the local plan with 105 units. Now, for reasons I don't know, it's now 144. My main concerns is around, originally the application was submitted by the developers, stating that they wanted the entrance from Woodlands Road, and that the entrance on Mount Pleasant Road would only be a service entrance. And now all of a sudden, we did actually highlight our concerns that the entrance from Mount Pleasant was not viable, and we were reassured that that would not take place. And now all of a sudden, they've gone back on their word, and now that is going to be one of the two entrances. I don't believe that's going to be beneficial to the residents that live on Mount Pleasant Road. Certainly, the increase in traffic, especially, I know you're saying there's going to be a shuttle bus that's going to be transporting people to and from the station. However, I do have concerns that there'll be visitors and there'll be staff that will be also getting access to and from the property, the development site. Now, on a third point, which has already been mentioned, I live in Chigwell myself. I live in Grange Hill, and I can tell you that we do not have any doctor surgeries. I know that's been already said, but I want to really put that in bold. We do not have any doctor surgeries in Epping Forest. The one that's been mentioned is in Redbridge, and that's where we have to go. We are registered in Redbridge. I have some serious concerns about this application, the density, and also the question arises about the traffic, vehicular traffic. And of course, this is a retirement home, councillors, and retirement home means there's people that will require from time to time health provisions to be provided to them. And if you do not have that level of support to offer, where are you going to be registering these patients? So I am with the residents on this, and I totally support the residents on this. I personally cannot find any reasons how this application should be granted planning permission. I respectfully ask the panel of Plans A to seriously consider not granting this application purely on the basis that we just simply do not have the infrastructure in Chigwell to support this application. Thank you very much, Chairman, and over to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to come in at this point. There's a number of matters that I would just like to respond to. Going back to some of Councillor Morgan's points about the number of stories on the buildings, the heights do vary across the site. So the tallest building is 5 stories, the smallest of the buildings is 2 story, and the ones in the middle are around 4 stories in height, just to clarify that point. In terms of the healthcare provision, it doesn't necessarily matter whether the healthcare centre is in the district or not. What matters is that a provision will be made in accordance with the Healthcare Commission. There are sites that are within 1 mile of this site that are not in our district that would benefit from the money. In terms of the access in the green belt, the committee report addresses this matter. Obviously, the wider greenbelt area has been de-designated, apart from a very sort of narrow strip of land. And within the context of the wider greenbelt, really, it has very limited amenity to the greenbelt designation. And also, it's part of the site allocation. In terms of the access from Woodlands Road and the access from Mount Pleasant Road in terms of emergency access, this has been assessed by the highways engineer and there are no technical grounds to require this.
Thank you. Committee members, it's now your opportunity to discuss this. Councillor Cohen.
Okay. I hear that there's a shuttle bus being provided. I'd like to know where the shuttle bus is going. And if it is going to Grangehill Station, which I assume it would be, there must be step-free access or a lift which the developer should pay for the elderly people to use.
In terms of the shuttle bus, you'll note that there's a condition requiring a parking plan to be provided, and that is to seek details of where the shuttle bus would be parked on site. It is intended that the shuttle bus would be used by residents and it would take residents to the local town centre. In terms of providing level access for the London Underground station, obviously that is within the ownership of TfL. So any sort of funding or need to provide level access would be something that TfL would look into and have done on a number of stations in London, for example.
Are you suggesting that the shuttle bus will take people to Chigwell Parade? Is that the town centre that you're referring to?
Yes, I believe so. I believe it would take them there.
You turn your mic. Councillor Cohen. Thank you. Any further councillors? Yeah, go on.
Thank you. One thing on the design there. Can you tell me, if you've got a 5-storey block, whether there'll be a lift in there? Because these are elderly people, and I cannot see them walking up 5 flights of stairs.
Yes, they all have lifts. Yeah.
Councillor Bedford.
Thank you, Chairman. Very emotive subject and planning application that we see before us this evening. And I think that we have to take into account here that this is an allocated site in the local plan. And I also think we have to take into account the judgment that was read out to us earlier on by Sweeney. And we also need to consider that by developing this out and it becoming an old people's type retirement village or homes, that will free up additional housing within the district for other people. Excuse me, we're talking. Thank you. Wait. Chairman, I might suggest that if this carries on, we clear the gallery.
Yeah.
Thank you. It is a difficult decision. I think very emotive that the councillors have been able to speak on behalf of their residents, and I fully understand the reasons why. I think we also need to consider that the Greenbelt issue, it has been taken out of Greenbelt, which was the whole substance of having a local plan brought forward to identify areas. It was agreed, it went before the inspector, and the inspectors have agreed that the taking the removal of the 1 or 2% that came out of the Greenbelt for future housing development was the only way we were going to meet those housing needs. This site has been allocated in the local plan. It is designated, whether it's for this plan or for others, as housing going forward. And I think actually, to be fair, I think this is probably a better solution than if it was to be another 120 houses put on the site. And the main reason for that is, one, it will reduce the impact of vehicles coming out of sites like that. We have seen that on the other existing sites that are in and around the Loughton area in particular, where housing for older people has seen a decrease in the traffic movements. There are issues that have been discussed tonight by other councillors and residents, which I take personally as not being material planning decision that we should be looking at. That is the TfL decision that is outside the remit of this planning decision. And we are here purely tonight to look at this application, which is before us this evening, and look at the planning grounds for this development. And as such, I'm of the opinion that this development should go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shreve. Sorry, sir, if you don't be quiet, I'll have you removed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with Councillor Nigel Bedford here. This is a very, very difficult application. There's so many things to consider here. And we've heard from the residents and other councillors that are not committee members. For me personally, it's about the GPs. The GP surgery is in Redbridge. Already we've heard that they can't get appointments. How are we going to tackle that if this development goes ahead? What's in place? We've got this £1 million coming in, but how much of that is going to be allocated to, we've got residents, if this is a care home, a residential home, presumably 65 plus years, potentially they will have greater health needs. So that concerns me greatly. If you could answer that, thank you.
Thank you. I think it's important to note that this isn't a normal sort of market housing scheme. This is a retirement village. And you'll note from the supporting documents that there will be an element of on-site care for residents. So in that sense, it means that there should be less burden on a sort of day-to-day basis on local services. You mentioned the £1 million, that's actually for the affordable housing contribution. The contribution towards health is 150,000, just over 150,000.
Councillor Bedford.
Thank you, Chairman. I think also we need to bear in mind that we do on quite a number of occasions ask for additional health facilities from the Primary Care Trust, and we do always get the same answer back. We can provide the money, but they can't provide the doctors. They haven't got the doctors to provide them. We've got surgeries that are actually empty in various locations because it's the NHS can't provide. But that shouldn't be our major consideration. We can take it into account to a certain extent, but we have to remember that's outside our gift. We can't provide the doctors. Thank you.
Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a point on the shuttle bus service that's being offered. Is there indication on how long that will last for, what financial contribution that will be? So we've seen before where this is offered, works great for 2 or 3 years, and then there's another service that's needing to be picked up by the council, cost to all of us taxpayers. So concerns around that, if there's any information, please.
So the shuttle bus is to be secured by Section 106, and the Section 106 will ensure that the shuttle bus is provided and maintained for the lifetime of the development.
Councillor Bromwich.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite curious to know, it's probably listed in here, but just for ease, how many on-site parking spaces are going to be provided for residents? I ask because we live in a country where there's an incredibly ageing population. People are getting older. People want to maintain their freedom to drive, to get to the shops, to go to have their own independence. And I can't remember who mentioned it, it might have been Councillor Lyon, but a lot of these people will have relatives and they'll have carers as well. And I am concerned that the access road to this site will have an issue with parking if there is not enough on-site spaces for that. I completely acknowledge and understand the points about health infrastructure. That's just how it is. The country's broken in terms of healthcare infrastructure. But I'd be particularly interested to know how much on-site parking there is. Thank you.
So the level of on-site parking proposed is 120 parking spaces. That's a ratio of 0.83 spaces per unit. There is a condition seeking a parking plan which would allocate parking for residents and parking for visitors. So that is to be provided prior to commencement of the development. But it's important to note that the site allocation specifically says that there shouldn't be a reliance for on-site parking for residents. So in policy terms, there's actually not a requirement to adhere fully to the parking standards. And we feel that a ratio of 0.83 spaces per unit, along with the other sustainable transport measures, is a very good balance.
Sorry, did you want to come back?
And I completely understand the position you're in, to the officer. And one thing that I would say, if you're looking at it from a human element, where on, let's say, you will go and visit, you'll have children from the local area going to visit their grandparents on the weekends. You will be having families get together for Sunday lunches in the flats. You're going to be having weekends where you could potentially see this access up to this site completely obstructed by cars because this 0.8 ratio is just been completely blown out by the fact that it's a weekend and people get together and they see their families at the weekend. That is a concern that I have, that could provide difficult for especially emergency service vehicles getting down there, and especially on a weekend if there is an issue with a fire. I would obviously defer any fire knowledge to Councillor Bedford, but that would be a concern I have, whether at the weekend when there are cars backed up on both sides there will be enough room for an emergency vehicle to get down.
So in terms of access, the Fire Brigade have come back and haven't objected, so they have no technical reasons or they haven't highlighted any concerns for them. So we think that's acceptable. And obviously Essex County Highways have also raised no objection to the development and are happy with the access arrangements for the site. In terms of trip generation, you'll note that trip generation is fairly low in comparison to normal open market housing schemes. And you'll also note from the committee report that the applicant is a retirement village provider. They've got a number of schemes across the UK, and actually the level of parking on this site is quite high in comparison to their other sites. So in a sense, in terms of their experience, if you will, they're actually providing more than what they would possibly normally require.
Councillor Lyon.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks for allowing me to come back. A couple of points. It has been mentioned that the original development said access will be via Woodlands Road, and that was the case, and that Mount Pleasant would only be an access for emergency access. But I believe this is a different developer and a different development, and therefore they've actually split the access, which means there'll be less traffic going through each route. I'm not sure how that makes a difference, but it is quite a restricted area, although Woodlands Road is yellow lines on either side, so the parking there is less of an issue. Certainly in Mount Pleasant it is a residential street, and there are residential parking all along there, and it can be quite difficult. The GP provision, I did raise this because I suggested in sort of deliberations that there could be a GP practice on site. And one of our councillors is a GP, and I raised it with him, and he said there'd been no additional GP practices authorised by the government for a number of years. So it wasn't something that was a practical solution. And I think what's been proposed is the only option at the moment. And yes, there is no provision of GPs in Chigwell, Manford Way, which is close. They're all Redbridge. But the one that's been mentioned here is actually an Essex Health, part of Essex ICS, part of the Essex Health organisation. So although it's in Redbridge, it is under Essex. So that's the difference. And again, this is a fairly contentious site. It's always been a contentious site. But it does offer something quite different. And I know there was another mention of a home further up, a nursing home further up the road. That's quite a different nursing home. That is specialised care, whereas this is independent living. And again, it is quite a unique opportunity. So just to add to the committee's information.
Councillor Matthews. Councillor Matthews is given way to you, Councillor Sharif.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews, and thank you, Chairman. Can I just go back to the healthcare that's going to be provided on site, please? Can you explain exactly what is going to be available?
The healthcare provision is set out in the committee report. I think there, just bear with me a second, there's a full description of where the money would actually go. I might... That's all right. Yeah, so the Healthcare Board have basically asked for a contribution of 150,480, and they have said that it would be towards Chigwell surgery, and intend to arrange for the practices patient records to be lifted to off-site storage to allow room that they occupy to be repurposed into additional clinical space. So that's one of the options that they're currently looking at the moment.
Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chair. Listening to everyone this evening, there's a lot to digest. Obviously, in the run-up to this meeting, we've had a lot of emails, we've had a lot of information to process. Came here this evening with an open mind to try and very much listen to all sides of the argument. It's very clear there's something in this application that everyone doesn't like, and I know that's been said many times about the local plan as a whole. There are many things in here that everyone doesn't like. However, we have to follow policy. The reason we have policy is to take the emotion out of the situation, and when looking at this application, it's conforming with the policies. The how it got there, the when it got there, whether it should have been in or shouldn't have been in, I don't believe is relative to the discussion we're having this evening. What we're looking at is the application before us, which is in an area allocated within our local plan as it stands here this evening. So I think there isn't a policy that could lead us to reject this application, and I think the policy, it's following the policies we've set out within our local plan. So I think while it won't be a popular decision, I think we will be minded to, or I personally will be minded to support this application this evening and agree with the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Right then, members, the application before us is to approve with conditions and subject to a 106 agreement. All those in favour, please show.
5, Chairman.
Sorry?
She's mentioned about the delegated decision to commit.
No, I'll do that when we get to the end of that. Yeah.
5.
Those against?
2, Chairman.
Abstentions? No. Right, therefore then that application has been approved with conditions which should be delegated to the officers
And amendments to section 106.
and amendments to the section 106
ones.
agreement. Thank you. Yeah, we can do. Yeah, and if we adjourn for 5 minutes to allow the public to clear.
We're going back to the first one.
No, we're going back to...
The second one.
Yeah, the second one, yeah. I better bang my thing.
Yeah, bang it. Only two now.
All right, thank you. Our second application is number 7 on the agenda, which is planning application EPF/278723, which is land north of Chelmsford Road, Ongar, CM5 9LX, on pages 59 to 91 of the agenda, and Mo will be taking us through it.
Good evening, Chair, members, and everyone. I am Mohammed Rahman, Senior Planner and Case Officer for this planning application, land north of Chelmsford Road in Ongar. So, members, this application is before this committee since it consists of 10 dwellings or more, and the officer recommendation is for approval. The proposal is for 129 dwellings and associated works. The site is allocated within the adopted local plan for approximately 163 dwellings. And before we move on to the slides, there are some minor changes to conditions 10, 11, 12, 13, and 31, just to make them clearer. Conditions 25 and 26 regarding the travel plan and travel packs are now to be secured via a Section 106 obligation, plus a further change to one of the planning obligations, which I'll go through in the slides. So here we have the location plan, outlined in red. Here's an aerial view of the site. So here's the wider allocation of the northern section of Ongar. So this is the application site over here, site number 4. And you have site number 1 and 2. So these 3 sites had to work in partnership to develop the movement strategy. So here's the site allocation. And as stated over here, approximate figure of 163 dwellings. So here's the proposed master plan. So the main axis is over here. You have a pedestrian footpath over here. And there's a mix of 1 to 5 bed dwellings across the site, and open space, suds area over here, and various landscaping throughout the site to across the site. Here are some of the building types. So these are the apartment blocks, some of the dwellings. Here are further examples. And moving on to the highway improvements. So this is the proposed wider movement strategy, which has been developed with site number 1 and 2. And there's various improvements which are detailed within the agenda, but some of them includes having 2-meter wide footpaths, signal crossing point over here. You've got a right turn junction over here. You've got an informal crossing point over here. Various guard railings over here, amongst others. So this is the section which this site number 4, which will deliver as secured by condition number 3. So the areas shaded in red and yellow. And just on this point, so in terms of the movement strategy, right, the council, along with Essex Highways and applicants for this site and sites 1 and 2, have been working on the highway improvements for over a year. The proposed improvements are considered to be the best outcome, complies with current standards, and above all else, safe, i.e. It will not harm the safety operation of the highway network. Other possible improvements such as traffic lights, roundabouts, and cycle improvements were discussed and considered to have the opposite effect in that they are likely to lead to harm to cycle users, increase congestion, and impact the free flow of traffic, thereby harming the safety operation of the highway network. So this is the High Ongar Road and Chelmsford Road junction to the site. Here's a closer view, and here's the right turn junction proposed over here into the site. There's an informal crossing, and the road would be widened to make way for this junction. So here are the Section 106 planning obligations. So the change I mentioned at the beginning was to number 4. So previously we were securing sums towards the ambulance service. This is now to be directed towards Ongar Health Centre, and the sum has been increased to 215,000. This was on the request of the NHS. So just to summarize the case, so the full merits are within the agenda, and in terms of the summary, whilst the proposal is for 129 units, 34 less or a 20% reduction than the approximate allocated figure of 163 units. However, the challenge is that a balance had to be struck in meeting the Ongar neighbourhood plan policies as well as the allocation sites. As set out in the report, the delivery of housing on the allocated sites forms part of the Council's housing step trajectory and is an essential part of delivering planned housing development within the district during the local plan period. Officers consider that the scheme before members strikes that balance, and therefore the proposed housing mix, layout and design is acceptable. The proposal satisfies the site-specific policy requirements as set out in detail in the agenda. It also safeguards the living conditions of neighbouring amenities, the protected trees, and would provide a good level of accommodation for future users. There would be benefits from the construction and occupation of the homes, along with wider pedestrian highway improvements, as shown on the previous slides, to the 4-1 roundabout, including which will be delivered directly by the applicants, Persimmon Homes. And there's also a further contribution of 609,000, as shown over here, towards highway improvements. So 289 towards Cooper's Hill roundabout, and a further 320,000 towards public transport improvements. There would also be further benefits with the delivery of 52 affordable homes and over 2 million towards the planning obligations, as shown here. Over half, or 1 million, highlighted in green, the Town Council could use towards open space, sports facilities and community facilities. So I repeat, that's over 1 million which the Town Council can have access to for these services highlighted in green. The affordable housing offer is fully policy compliant. Overall, the proposal would deliver homes on an allocated site in line with the visions and objectives of the adopted local plan and Ongar neighbourhood plan, of which one is to provide a mix of new homes within the district to meet the needs of needs of existing and future generations. Members will, of course, consider the concerns raised by local residents. However, balance must be struck in considering the needs of the future generations. They are those who will live in these 129 homes, including the 52 affordable units, and support the economy of Ongar. For these reasons, officer recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to conditions and a completed Section 106 legal agreement. Thank you, Chair. Stand.
Thank you. We have a couple of public speakers on this. The first one is Chris Ray, in person, an objector. Again, sir, I'll remind you have 3 minutes, and turn the microphone on when you start and off when you finish. Thank you.
The residents group objects to this planning application that it's non-compliant with many national EFDC and Ongar planning policies for Ongar's predominantly family-orientated demographic. The summary, the design is not acceptable or respectful for Ongar's needs and requirements, its environment, its heritage, and should be rejected. The design is urban in layout, not rural, as defined in the policy ONG ED1, local character and design. The housing mix is non-compliant with MUST policy, ONG RR3, housing mix and standards, being 54% 3-bedroom plus when the requirement is for 70% 3-bedroom plus. The buffer zone to the north and the west of the site is 12-metre garden plus a 4-metre buffer zone. But some properties have no buffer. For example, Whitegate's next to a 2-storey block of flats, which is significant loss of privacy and amenity, not compliant with policy ONG ED6 landscape and buffer. The tree assessment report identified 13 trees and 1 TPO tree. It missed 150 mature trees, 10 TPO trees and a 40-metre hedge, 90% of the trees on the site, of which the current plan will remove at least a dozen mature undocumented trees, and others will not be protected by the design, with the buildings, roads and paths on their root protection area, not compliant with policy ONG ED5 natural environment. The housing officer's subjective conclusion, he states the housing mix is trading with housing density. This is incorrect. There are multiple examples of sites with our housing mix requirement and a higher density. In addition, the first submission last December was compliant with the housing mix. The original Greenstead Road application was dismissed at appeal due to it not being compliant with housing mix. Just because this is an allocated site, it does not give the developer a right to be non-compliant on policy. In conclusion, this design is not acceptable, respectful for Ongar's needs and requirements, heritage and environment. It should be rejected as non-compliant with multiple policies. If this is approved, it will be dangerous precedent to set that it's okay to breach policy for future planning applications. Most of these objections were raised during the first submission in December and could have easily been mitigated with a meaningful engagement that in reality was minimal and dismissive. If this application is rejected, it will give us an opportunity to engage with the developers to produce an acceptable, robust and compliant design that incorporates the current conditions and meets the needs of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker is a representative of the Town Council, Henry Wilson. You have 3 minutes, sir.
This proposal doesn't deliver the type of houses that our residents need. EFDC's own Strategic Housing Market Assessment, or SHMAR, shows that our residents need 70% of new builds to have 3 or more bedrooms. These proposals only deliver 54%. This is a clear breach of Epping Forest Local Plan Policy H1, which states, planning applications will be supported by evidence to justify the mix of new homes to be provided. There is no justification for this mix of homes. It's also a clear breach of Ongar Neighbourhood Plan Policy on RR3, which states, the mix of accommodation must reflect the latest evidence of local need. These plans do not. The case officer justifies approval, despite non-compliance policy, saying it is officer's opinion that the developers would be unable to fully comply with both the site allocation and the neighbourhood plan. He argues that the increased parking spaces and increased site size needed to service larger houses would not be deliverable on this site at this allocation amount. This is categorically incorrect. It is perfectly possible to deliver 129 homes on this site and deliver a housing mix that meets the needs of our community. The developers could submit plans that are architecturally more creative, have less hard surfacing, and use space more intelligently. 129 dwellings on this plot equates to roughly 33 dwellings per hectare. 33 dwellings per hectare. Architect journals establish that purely detached housing can be delivered at densities up to 35 dwellings per hectare, and semi-detached housing and short terraces with maximum height of 2 stories can be delivered at at densities up to 50 dwellings per hectare. This shows that the case officer is mistaken. If densities of 50 dwellings per hectare can be delivered in a suburban character, it is plainly possible to deliver 129 high-quality homes with an appropriate housing mix and sufficient parking at 33 dwellings per hectare with space to spare. The developers have chosen not to. There is local precedent for successful refusal on this policy basis. The Greenstead Road allocated site within Ongar was refused by FDC due to an inappropriate housing mix. This refusal was upheld at appeal. The reason given, and I quote, "It is unclear that the housing being delivered would appropriately address identified local need. This proposal fails to meet local need and would set a dangerous precedent. Councillors have a clear policy basis to reject it, and a clear reason to disagree with a case officer's conclusion. I urge you to do so and refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is the applicant's agent, Paige Milner-Harris. You've again 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to address committee this evening. From our extensive public consultation, we acknowledge there's a strong sense of community and pride for Ongar's distinctive rural character and high-quality built and natural environment. Accordingly, we have looked to work with the Council, its urban design team and the Quality Review Panel to ensure the key policy aspirations set out in the Ongar Neighbourhood Plan, Ongar Design Guide, as well as the Council's local plan are met to deliver a low-rise, low-density scheme with a leafy green character that has strong visual links to the surrounding countryside. We have ensured that the existing trees and hedgerows within the site are central to the design of the scheme. Alongside these, a new network of tree-lined streets and landscape spaces have been created to soften proposals, protect the amenity of the listed For Once farmhouse and existing properties, and provide a defensible, soft rural edge to the green belt beyond the eastern boundary. This landscaping will be planted with native species that will encourage wildlife, achieve a biodiversity net gain, and deliver sustainable drainage scheme. Footpath and cycle links are central to the proposed development, and our proposals include improvements to the existing highway network to the centre of Ongar. A contribution of £320,000 will also be made to improve local bus services. For the housing mix, we acknowledge that there's a large demand for 3 and 4 bed family homes, and accordingly we have ensured that over 70% of the private dwellings achieve this. The scheme will also deliver 40%, that's 52, affordable homes that are aligned to the local housing need and are pepper-potted within the development and tenure-blind in design to maintain an inclusive community. For the design of the houses, we have looked to identify key high-quality architectural details, Indigenous materials and vernacular style from the Ongar Conservation Area to ensure the distinct local character of the town is maintained within the proposed traditional development. All dwellings will be provided with high-speed broadband connection, electric vehicle charging and cycle storage. All homes will also meet a high standard of environmental performance and will exceed nationally described space standards. All dwellings with accessible ground floors will be delivered to Part M42 to ensure these homes can adapt to older and less mobile occupants. The scheme will also secure over £2 million of contributions to improve the existing infrastructure within Ongar and will importantly include over £1.4 million to provide and improve open spaces, community facilities, GP services and education, all of which have been identified from our public consultation as being deficient in Ongar. I hope you will be supportive of these proposals and that you will agree with the case officer's recommendation to resolve to approve this application for this allocated site. Thank you.
Thank you. Ward councillors. Councillor Dadd.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the speakers tonight and also the case officer presenting that. I know that the case officer has worked very hard with Persimmon recently to try and mitigate some of the original objections. And I'm wondering whether it would be useful if you wouldn't mind putting up the slide of the master plan, because I am going to refer to a few points on there. We're very lucky in Epping Forest that we have got an up-to-date local plan, and also Ongar is with its neighbourhood plan, which, as many of you know, I was actually very much involved with. Now, the neighbourhood plan has to be aligned, is examined in the same way as the local plan, and it has to be in alignment with the strategic policies of the local plan, and the Ongar neighbourhood plan is so. And we're also lucky that EFDC is delivering on target our housing need. And I feel, councillors, that we have a duty to protect the distinctive character of each of our areas by making sure that any development that comes forward is policy compliant for as long as we possibly can. We know there are changes ahead and we might have to have more housing yet. But there's 3 points I want to make on planning considerations, and there's also one about infrastructure. And this relates to the revised proposal, and it is an allocated site, and we do know and accept that it is going to be developed. The first one is, even at the start, I feel that Persimmon misunderstood the character of this edge of settlement site by looking at the National Design Guide, Ongar Design Guide, which quite clearly says looping streets, grass verges, low hedges, glimpses to the countryside. The Quality Review Panel have various comments about its urbanisation style, and our urban designer had a lot of comments very diplomatically, but asked for quite a few conditions to try and actually bring it more in line. Unfortunately, there was no early engagement with councillors, and since I've become a councillor, they've actually refused to have contact with me about the latest revisions, which is a pity, and it is quite different to what's happened at the West Ongar concept, which have had very early engagement before they had their set layout designed. At the moment, because of the characterisation, I feel that it is actually out of is contrary to DM9, is contrary to local plan SP2, and I've marked which part that is, because that says in part B, it should enhance the distinctive character and identity of the area, and the surrounding streets and context is not that. And also, as previously mentioned, is contrary to the character as stated in Ongar Neighbourhood Plan Policy ED1. The second point, there's no dispute on housing number, which is now 129. That's 34 short, but in Ongar, in the last 2.5 years, we've actually had more than 40 windfall sites, of which most of them are 1- and 2-bedroom conversions in the centre. And we welcome the 40% affordable. But the rationale of the Ongar Neighbourhood Plan for housing mix quite clearly stipulates that the mix for Schmar overall in EFDC should apply to Ongar itself, because Ongar has, and particularly with more family homes at the edge of settlement, as is this site. So it does not meet the local housing need, as per the latest Schmar, or the NOMIS, which is based on the census of 2011 and 2021, in relation to Policy H1, Policy SP2, which I've just now stated, because both of those do say 70% 3-bedroomed or more, 20% 2-bedroom, 10% 1-bedroom. Those are virtually the same as the existing housing stock in Ongar. And that is one of the stipulations in H1. It should take account of the existing housing stock and the need to maintain that mix. Ongar is a family-orientated community, and the facilities reflect that. We've got secondary schools, we've got a new health centre, not many doctors, but we've got the space for them, and also we've got leisure centre and sports facilities. So to be clear, the neighbourhood plan policy, Ongar RR3, reinforces the local plan policy on housing H1, but in the Ongar parish itself. Both say they must apply, and any deviation from the mix must also be evidenced and justified, and it is not in this case. The original 119 homes did have the correct housing mix of 70% 3-bedroom, 20% 2-bedroom, and 10% 1-bedroom. But 10 more houses, all of a sudden we have got 3-bedroom or more houses, 16 more 1-bedroom houses than required, and 4 more 2-bedroomed. So that is a large deviation down to 54%, unjustified. On page 66 of the case officer report on your agenda, page 66, he seems persuaded that the local plan and Ongar neighbourhood plan are not compatible in this regard with the allocated number, and that Ongar RR3 is not specific, but it is. It requires the same as existing mix in Ongar, and the rationale for that can be seen in Ongar neighbourhood plan section 6.4. The appeal inspector agreed that Ongar RR3 is specific on housing mix. The Greenstead Road appeal was dismissed, partly on incorrect housing mix for the edge of settlement site. And I'm going to quote something from this because I think this is a very important aspect. she says that however, while policy H1 of the LP, this is part 33 of the report, while policy H1 of the local plan also seeks a mix of new housing, including range of types, etc., he said it also includes a requirement for evidence to justify the mix of new homes to be provided, advising that this evidence must reflect the latest housing needs evidence published by the Council. Policy ONGA RR3 of the Neighbourhood Plan similarly sets out that the mix of accommodation in residential development must reflect the latest evidence of local need in ONGA to meet the requirements of all parts of the community. The Council's latest published housing needs, as we know, are SHMA 2015, which was updated in 2017. She goes on to say at a more local level, the Neighbourhood Plan notes on the rationales, I've just pointed out, on ONGA RR3, that the district housing mix is approximately the same as the existing housing mix in ONGA Parish according to 2011 census, and it seeks to maintain that mix as important for sustainability and to support predicted demographic changes. It also highlights high demand for family homes in Ongar, especially three-bedroom homes with gardens and parking, which is evidenced actually with Sears and market sales. And the comments that the edge of settlement sites, allocated sites including the appeal site, that's the Greenstead Road one, are ideal for such homes. The 2011 census is some years old, but interested party representations detail that the 2021 census figures show a broadly similar mix to the position in 2011, albeit a slight increase in 1, 2 and 4 bedroom dwellings and a slight reduction in 3-bedroom dwellings. And she goes on to say, I cannot be sure that any shortfall in provision of larger homes here would be adequately compensated for by development coming forward on other sites, whether allocated or not, over the plan period, so as to achieve an overall mix to meet the needs and sustain the balanced community as sought by the local plan and the neighbourhood plan. As a consequence, I am unable to find that the development would comply with policies H1 of the local plan and ONGA RR3 of the neighbourhood plan in all respects, and I conclude that the proposal would not provide an appropriate mix of housing types. And things have not changed in the last year, and that has been, there's still the demand there. Our case offer is highly qualified chartered town planner, but the skills of architects are quite different. As already alluded to, 2011, the Architects' Journal showed that higher density than the pre-war, but still leafy openness in low-rise suburbs works up to 35 homes per hectare for all detached homes, and up to 50 per hectare with semi-detached and terraces. This density is approximately 33 per hectare, excluding the SUDS area. I think the developers need to go back to basic principles and their appointed architects. At Monday at Cabinet, the West Ongar concept with similar density assured delivery of the correct housing mix. Planning law must comply with policy. Is plan-led unless exceptional circumstances which must be evidenced. There's no such evidence or circumstances not to comply, and I'm talking about policy H1 and the ONGA 1 RR3. And despite the latest tweaks, and there is less harm to some of the existing neighbours' amenities and the setting of the four wants, this is my third point, the Four Once Farm has much better buffer zone, but Whitegates has considerable more harm. Now, Whitegates is at the bottom of your picture, where the entrance from A4 goes through the pedestrian route. Just to the east of that is Whitegates. Now, the site that they've got the blocks of flats, and Block C is on the eastern side of that part, and that is a mere 1.5 metres from the border. There's no reason why it has to be there. There is 42 metres in width in that plot there, and they've got 3 blocks of flats, 1.5 metres from the boundary, and be directly overlooking White Gates. That's not very neighbourly, and it's unnecessary, and it should be removed. It's also contrary to DM9 and ONG ED6. So in summarising that, I feel very strongly, I have had a lot of complaints from residents, and they feel very strongly about it must be the right development. But it must comply with strategic policies. So number one, the housing need is not met with correct housing mix, which should be approximately 70% 3-bedroomed or more, 20% 2-bedroom, 10% 1-bedroomed, as for the latest SHMA and NOMIS, and that's H1 and RR3. But also it needs to be addressed the harm to the amenity of White Gates, and it's out of character. Too urban and enclosed for its context of edge of rural settlement. But lastly, I think we also need to address the important infrastructure concerns before, and I hope you will refuse this, but before it comes back to committee. I'm sure that the EFDC drainage officer and urban designer will look and make sure that the SUDS calculations are spot on, and also that area is used for multi-purpose features. But there's a lack of requirement from highways to improve the access onto this busy A414. This is already hazardous. It cannot wait until we have more fatalities and serious injury on this notorious road. And I request this committee to send it back to Essex Highways to require the developer to provide 3 things. 30-mile-an-hour extended from the Four Once roundabout to the east of the High Ongar Road. Secondly, for gateway features to be clearly defined and help with slowing the traffic. And thirdly, part-time traffic lights or similar at a junction of High Ongar Road and the A414. This is a really important site that's coming forward. You've got to get it right for Ongar's future community. You've got to get it right for EFDC. Developers must follow policy, and this is not compliant. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Are there any other ward councillors present? I don't believe there are. We've actually got the highways officer here. Could you answer any questions? Or do you want to go through you? Yeah, if you'd like to come back.
I just want to clarify some points. So, obviously, the government position is to provide more housing, right? Boost the supply of housing. This is an allocated site within the adopted local plan. It's plan-led. There's an approximate figure of 163 units. This proposal before members is a 20% reduction already in terms of trying to find that balanced housing mix. Now, the housing mix suggested by the parties is not prescriptive as set out in the agenda. So officers consider the housing mix is justified as confirmed by the council's housing team as well. On design is subjective. The council's quality review panel and the urban design team and officers support the design. Members have the information in the agenda to form their own conclusions. And in terms of the highway and drainage, we do have the highways officer with us and the drainage officer on teams who can answer any specific technical questions. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, can I just come back on something that the case officer just said that the housing officer was happy about the mix. It must be made clear, though, that the housing officer in her report says she was only talking about affordable housing, and that's not the same as the overall housing mix. Thank you.
So in terms of the housing mix, it is in line with the SHMA and the latest evidence and the housing register. It's within the housing officer's comments. And I would just say one point, in terms of if we are to get more family housing on this site, what it means is less homes. It also means less. It also means less affordable homes. It also means less Section 106 monies.
Thank you. Yeah, did you want to comment on the highways?
With regard to, I'll take the gateway features are conditioned, I believe, as part of the overall highway works. In terms of 30-mile-an-hour extension, that's, as you probably know, that's subject to a TRO, which sits outside of planning. It's probably, having spoken to colleagues and seen what the police have said, I think that would probably be struggle to be enforced just with the nature of the road here. There's not much active frontage, etc. The 40-mile-an-hour buffer, let's call it, at the point to the right-hand side of the Hyonga Road junction has been, in principle, agreed, and there shouldn't be any problem delivering that. As I say, the 30, it could possibly be looked at, but from, as I say, what I've heard and my experience, it probably won't be supported by the police or colleagues at Essex County Highway. So, yeah, I can't. It's hard to say if it doesn't fall in planning. So, what I would say is the junction has been assessed as is and complies with standards and the speed of the road now, so it doesn't actually require any reduction in the speed limit. Obviously, the 40 has been agreed as a preference to, as I said, a buffer, and obviously in light of the increased traffic and the slight change in character, but 30, as I say, you can't guarantee that would be implemented and then enforced by the police either. So that's one thing. In terms of signals, that isn't something that's been assessed. I mean, as I say, from personal experience, I would say you're 300 metres prox from the roundabout, it still feels very rural. You don't tend to get lights, isolated signals in rural locations just because they can be more dangerous than not having anything there. And as I said, it's been fully assessed as submitted with a full-blown right turn lane, complies with national highway design standards. So the junction is being improved. Its visibility will be created and maintained in perpetuity for the speed of the road now, which is in excess of the 40. And obviously with the gateway features on the island, this will have, the physical features do have the benefit of reducing speed. That's a fact. And the assessment of the junction shows that it works, and it's been assessed to the end of the local plan period with all the local plan traffic on the network in 2033, and there aren't any capacity issues or safety issues. I say it's been been subject to a stage one road safety audit as well, with no fundamental issues raised. Consequently, as I say, again, it's not something needed to make the access work for the development.
Thank you. Come back. What the question wasn't. Sorry, excuse me. So, Councillor Bedford.
Thank you. I've listened to the Essex County Council Highways Officer, and there's a couple of points I'd pick up on. I was the former councillor for the Shelley area, and I'm fully aware of the problems and the issues that local residents have had, and the discussions that have been held in the past. I think perhaps highways are missing a point here. Talk about the 30-mile-an-hour limit not being enforceable. If that was the case, why did the police arrest everybody the other side of the roundabout, going down as you leave from Ongar, going out to the rural side towards North Weald, which is exactly the same type of road from the hill going downhill, where the Essex Police quite often have a police speed trap set up on that side of the road. So I don't think that's the issue. I think the main problem here is that you mentioned, I think, about something that's not been assessed with regards to the traffic light situation. I think it can work in this situation because we have a very busy roundabout. Yes, it's going to get some highway improvements, and we know that those are greatly needed anyway for that particular roundabout. I think the main issue is that if the traffic survey, as you say, has been carried out, obviously people couldn't have been carrying that out at 7 o'clock in the morning when anybody that wants to come out of that particular High Ongar Road turning, and bearing in mind you've probably got 200 to 300 cars that are going to be on that new estate, at least 200 cars I would think on there, with the average family house on that, it's going to need 2 vehicles. As people come out onto the High Ongar Road to turn right to go to their into Ongar itself, there is no safe route to cross that road to turn right. And I think if we were to have a dedicated set of traffic signals that were part-time, even if they only worked on a sensor that, so it stopped the traffic just to allow those 2 or 3 cars out to turn right, that would greatly improve that junction. I think that's something the developer could pay for. If it was to make things worse, they could be removed. I think we're not forward planning here. We're not looking at an active solution to the problem that people, bearing in mind the schools, you've got to come out and turn right to get to the schools. It just doesn't seem feasible to me that we can dismiss this by a few road improvements and changing the slip road. I think we do need to look at this in its entirety, and I think instead of refusing this application tonight, I think actually the way forward with this is if it was to be deferred to allow for further discussions and investigation works around, what can be achieved in trying to make this work. I understand the residents of Ongar know that this housing development is going ahead. I think we're probably there that we're trying to balance the Ongar neighbourhood plan with the local plan. If it's in full conformity with the local plan, it won't meet the Ongar plan. If it's fully conformity with the Ongar plan, it won't meet the neighbourhood plan. So we're going to go round in circles on that particular point. I think the main point here is about the safety of exiting from a side road, which on the plan up there, I can't really see how you can turn right across that traffic without... It's not so much... The traffic's going to be stationary coming down from the roundabout. You're going to try and cross that road, and traffic that's coming off the roundabout is coming downhill, accelerating away from the roundabout at that 200 yards, 157 or 143 metres is it to the roundabout. It's going to be doing 45 to 50 mile an hour by the time it comes down that road. Yes, we need the speed reduction. 2, you need a set of traffic lights, but those traffic lights need to be on a temporary basis, and you probably need a 30 mile an hour zone all along that road from just past that junction. I think that's my point. As a former ward councillor, I do understand the problems with this particular site. I know a lot of work has gone into the restructuring, redesign and layout and displaying of the roads. It doesn't get away from the fact we're putting 100 odd houses behind this with probably 150 to 200 cars. Thank you.
Member. Sorry, Councillor Kesker.
Thank you, Chairman.
As a ward councillor, sorry, I do apologise.
No, it's all right. Obviously, no, I can't sit on the committee, so I'm just speaking as a ward councillor here. I'm not against the development. I think that will go ahead and should go ahead. I'm only worried about the dangers of the access, and I know we've been assured that there won't be any. My worry is about people coming off of this site, turning right to go west, to go up to the Four Wants roundabout. I do not see how they're going to be able to cross that road safely. I don't see how pedestrians are going to be able to cross that road at that point. I don't think they should even try. I think they would have to walk up to the Four Wants, and that may well be what's intended. But if you've got a problem, and we have problems on other roads with regard to people speeding, you put in a speed camera. You've only got to get to 300 or 400 people with their fines, and people would soon learn to travel at the right speed. So I don't believe that this is impossible to achieve. And I would hate to make a prediction that in 2 years' time or something we're coming back to say that there are serious accidents, maybe fatalities, and we're going to have to look at the road system again. Let's look at it now rather than leaving it until something bad happens.
Thank you. Myself and the Vice Chairman went on a site visit there today, along with another couple of councillors. And the proposal, as we saw it, to put in a pelican crossing at the roundabout would actually act to slow that traffic down. Yes, I totally agree with you, the 30 mile an hour zone needs to be extended. It's a high speed road, 60 miles an hour, national speed limit. And no, I wouldn't try to get out of there when the traffic's flowing properly. I mean, we was there this afternoon, so it was quite broken, but that's for Bedford.
Chairman, just quickly, just as a point there, that I think the main point that's being missed here is that from 7 o'clock till 9 o'clock in the morning, the busy time when kids are coming out and going to school, and when that site's going to be fully occupied, the traffic is from the Four Wands roundabout down all the way down that road to the Mulberry House Centre on the right-hand side, and it's travelling at, say, 1 mile an hour to get up the hill. Very slow, very nose-to-tail traffic. So if you want to come out and cross, you've got to come out and basically block the road coming down from the roundabout. And that's my concern, whereas if it was a temporary, like time-controlled set of lights, at least it would stop the traffic coming up and allow those people to cross safely before traffic coming down. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's important to note that there's been obviously a lot of objection, particularly around the highways implications of this development. And I've listened to all of the comments from members, but I think members need to be aware that comments are quite anecdotal in nature, and due regard needs to be paid to the consultation response. So the expert consultee in this case is Essex County Highways. They've assessed the current proposal and they are of the view that it's acceptable. So from an appeals perspective, for example, an inspector is unlikely to take into account anecdotal concerns. The issues have to be technical matters.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just wanted to raise a question. Yes, I was at the site visit this afternoon and I was able to pull out, but that was 2:30 in the afternoon to turn right. It wasn't an issue. I think putting a 30 mile an hour limit in rather than a 40 limit would be advantageous, but I just wanted to check because there's a footpath with the central reservation going in. How far behind that, or how far in front of that, whichever way you want to look at it, would that 30 mile an hour limit be set? So not just at that crossing point, it must be before then. And how far back would it go?
It would really depend. I mean, it would be set to the east of it, but I couldn't possibly say how far it would be before it. But there's no standard or requirement for how far it needs to be.
That surely would depend on car stopping distance. So if they're travelling at 60 miles an hour to get down to stop for a pedestrian or just to slow down to 30 miles an hour, there must be a set distance back that you'd have to set that 30 mile an hour to before you got to a pedestrian area.
Well, it's quite straight through there, so visibility at the moment is perfectly adequate, even for the speed of the road. So the 30 mile an hour doesn't really have any bearing on that. But it would be, I mean, the 40 would be considered to the east of the proposed pedestrian refuge island, and if the 30 could be looked at the same place, basically.
Thank you. I'm aware that the way that the system now works is that ward councillors get their chance, but I would actually like to involve the committee as well. Councillor Dadd, yeah, go on then. Go on.
Point of information, I understood that you can't refuse an application based on high-risk aspects when they haven't done an objection, but you have got some clear policies that don't comply, which is H1 in particular, which has been supported by very, very similar situation at Greensted Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee members, Councillor Bromwich.
Thank you, Chair, and just a point that it's great to see finally some affordable housing targets being met. And credit to the officer for being so accommodating and informative, especially on the site visit. Now, one of the main points that I had is to do, unsurprisingly, with speeding down that road. It's really depressing, as someone who's only just recently been elected, to hear Essex Highways saying no to so many things that would just make things safer. So on our site visit earlier today, when I was leaving, I thought I'd do a little test, how quickly it would take me to go from that turning up to the roundabout. Now, I don't know whether I should be admitting it, but I did 62 by the time I got to that roundabout. And that's from a relatively slow turn off High Ongar Road. So I just think that if you are having a car turning off the Four Wants roundabout and onto that main stretch, which I'm sure a lot of us who use that road fairly often know is just somewhere that people bomb it down, that can be a tremendously dangerous hazard for that road. Something else that I would note is that we were walking down that road. I don't want to, I'll hazard a guess, but we are not the weight of school children, us three. We were getting blown around by cars that were coming past at 40, 50 miles an hour. And I'm thinking that if this is an estate which is being characterised for having family homes, you are going to be having children getting off the bus from school or wherever and walking home, and you can see some tragic circumstances that might arise from there not being a sensible, safe speed limit. There have been 8 accidents on this 400-metre stretch of road since 2018. I definitely agree with Councillor Bedford that there needs to be, and Councillor Dadd, that there needs to be a form of slowing traffic down, whether that is a 30-mile-an-hour zone, complemented by part-time traffic lights, or employment of a roundabout at that turning. I don't know. Just another point that I'll very briefly touch on that Councillor Dadd raised earlier was the distance of the boundary from White Gates, the adjacent property. Just from what I saw, there were 7 windows facing where will become a property, whilst there were just 4 windows facing the other way. So that indicates that the view of that property could be obscured, and like you said, it's not very neighbourly. So I would just, I completely understand and I appreciate the need for housing. I think this is ultimately, I would be inclined to vote for this, for the housing, but I just cannot get past the fact that this is a fundamentally dangerous stretch of road. And I think there needs to be some baked-in traffic speed reduction measures implemented before anything is discussed further.
So I just want to clarify a few points. So in terms of the highway improvements proposed on this section connected to this application site, so I'm not sure if my cursor is visible if I use this highlighter. So we have this informal crossing point over here, this section. All of this would be 60. From here on, all the way to the roundabout would be 40. What's proposed is 40 as to be secured by condition 3. And then from here, we have the 30. So there is a reduction proposed already. You're going to have a signal crossing point over here at the roundabout. There'll be guard railings. There's another crossing there. These, you would hope, would act as a natural calming measure, along with a 40 speed limit. So I just want to clarify, those are the current proposed highway improvements as secured by Condition 3.
Councillor Shreve.
Thank you, Chairman. I have no objection to the development itself, but like Councillor Bromwich here, I do object to the speeding. I know this road. We already have a death trap in Thornwood, road B1393, where we've got 3 different speed limits. It doesn't work. So we need to look at this very carefully, and highways need to look at this very, very carefully. We have got fatalities. We've got accidents happening, sometimes on a weekly basis. We need to be better serving our community and our residents. This development is great, but we need to look at this very, very carefully. Thank you.
Councillor Bassett.
Thank you. I too know the area quite well and drive past it at least twice a week on my way to Chelmsford. It is one of those areas where you see people travelling much too fast, especially going towards the roundabout, and I've seen several people go straight in the back of the car in front of them on it. What I would suggest is we have done it else, where we have spoken to the developer and asked if he would consider upgrading those to put in a set of temporary lights to assist people getting out from the estate, and also to make, which would then become a semi-pedestrian crossing as well. I think I'd like the development, yep, no problems with that, but I have grave concerns over traffic safety. And I do know the area quite well, and I have seen the accidents.
I'm not sure if we could ever condition that the developer has to put the lights in, but Mr. Courtney.
Actually, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just going to comment. Well, actually, well, yeah, we can condition that. We do condition that, obviously, the developer carries out highways works, and I believe there has been a conversation with the developer about additional highway works, which they are agreeable to, if members deem that acceptable. And that's kind of what I was going to come on to. Obviously, there's been a lot of discussion around the safety of the junction, completely understandably. Again, I go up and down that road, probably not as often as yourselves, but fairly often. I understand your concerns. Obviously, as both Kelly and Councillor Dadd actually have pointed out, we can't refuse on these grounds. We don't have evidence to refuse on these grounds. We've got Essex County Council saying this is, with these measures, it is safe, so I'm absolutely urging we don't refuse on those grounds. Councillor Bedford did suggest deferral to discuss this. In all honesty, I don't think there's any point, because Essex have made it very clear that they feel what's in front of us is acceptable. They're not necessarily going to agree to anything more than that. I think members need to make a decision. Either this is acceptable or further measures are needed to make it acceptable. We do have a condition on there, condition 3, which talks about obviously the highway improvement works. That refers to the 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. Obviously, if members deem it only acceptable with that change to 30 miles an hour, possibly, you know, something else added in there about further improvement works, and then that is, in my opinion, the decision that members should be making tonight. It should be a case of, if that's necessary to make it acceptable, that's the decision to be made tonight, and then that would be part of the decision.
Councillor Bassett.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think we've spoken about these sort of situations before. As we have the developer here, can we ask whether they would consider it as part of the discussions for the highways improvement?
Yeah, that's what we've effectively said, is that we're happy to go with that as long as all the improvement measures can be achieved.
Sorry,
actually, sorry, just so, yeah, sorry, because again, shouldn't really be inviting unless the chairman decides to invite members of the public to speak. No, but there has been that discussion. I can confirm that. Mohammed can come in and confirm that if you like. There has been that discussion just this week with the developers, because obviously this issue has been raised before tonight. So to ensure that we were prepared, we've made sure we've had that discussion. And yes, if it is deemed necessary to carry out these works, then the developer is willing to incorporate those, to fund that. Or to do the works, I believe. It's not even funding it, they actually will physically do the works, yes.
Councillor Bassett.
So therefore, can the condition, the relevant condition, be said with a view to possibly installing temporary traffic lights?
Can I clarify, what do you mean by temporary traffic lights? They only operate at certain times of day or?
Part-time signals.
Part-time signals? Right, yeah.
Is that motion?
Are you actually proposing that as an additional condition?
Or it's an amendment to the existing condition?
Right. Second for that? You was going to say something as well? No, that's cleared that. Right then, members. Sorry? Oh, yeah, sorry. Those in favour of that condition, sorry.
6, Chairman.
Those against?
1,
Abstentions?
0.
Thank you. So we can add that in. Yeah. Right, members. The application before you is, the officer's recommendation is to approve with conditions subject to a Section 106 agreement and amended conditions. All those in favour?
Unanimous.
Thank you. Therefore, that... I'll do that, yeah. Therefore, that application has been approved with conditions which are delegated to the officers and subject to any amendments to the Section 106 legal agreement. Thank you. Right, members, moving on then. Agenda item 6 is planning application EPF stroke 0007/24 Tudor House High Road, Thornwood, CM16 6LT on pages 5 to 58 of the agenda. Suki will take us through this and she'll explain the reason why it's in front of us. Oh, I'm sorry, I must remind you, Councillor Bromwich, that you obviously cannot take part in the debate, but you can, obviously, as the ward councillor. So you can remain there, but not in the voting. Sorry, if you could move across, please, yes.
Can you hear me, Chairman? Just while we're waiting. Yep. Just do a sound check. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Suki, if you want to take us through.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, members. The application site is known as Tudor House and is located on the eastern side of High Road, Thornwood. It covers approximately 4/5 of the full allocation under Thor R1 within the local plan. The remainder of the allocation extends to the north to include the greenfield. The application proposes 113 units. This application was presented to the East Area Planning Committee on the 18th of September 2024. Members of that committee have voted to approve the application subject to conditions and the completion of a Section 106 agreement. The Council Solicitor, after reviewing the webcast, has advised that there is considerable ambiguity regarding the precise resolution that was reached. Since this item is only seeking clarification on the approval, the full presentation will not be shown tonight. Members should also note that the Council has received comments from Savannah, an adjoining neighbour, since the agenda was published in regard to large construction vehicles passing through the main gate of Tudor House, which is in shared entrance, causing nuisance and disturbance. This matter would be controlled by the construction management plan, which is part of the approved drawing and document list. Members should also note that the requirement for the provision of a residential travel pack to be provided to each first household to occupy the new dwellings under condition 18 on page 17 of the agenda has now been included in the Section 106 agreement, and therefore this condition is no longer necessary and will be deleted. Revised figures for health and education contributions have now been received, which have resulted in an increased cost of over $260,000 for the applicant since the previous East Area Planning Committee. Also, as a result of objections raised by the Highway Authority, the applicant has agreed to pay the $340,000 towards public transport. Members should also be aware that the scheme was again reviewed by the Council's viability consultants, who found, taking in account the additional costs, the scheme could still afford to provide 37% of the homes as affordable and the full contributions. Our consultants found that the offer made by the applicant of 30% of the dwellings as affordable, split as 57% affordable rent and 3% shared ownership, along with the full Section 106 contributions, will result in a surplus of £1,682,356. The conclusions made by the Council's viability consultants were disputed by the applicant on the grounds that they believe that the build costs are greater than that found by the Council's cost consultants. There's a difference of about 1.2 million, and it was argued that the applicant that the consultants have not fully taken on board the specific build requirements of the high specification innovative homes, and therefore certain costs have been discounted that should not have been. There also remains differences in regard to whether professional fees should be 8% or 10% of the build costs. The sales figures and the sales rate were not agreed, and the benchmark land value is also disputed. Given the disputed figures, a late-stage viability review mechanism to allow the viability to be accurately re-evaluated near the end of the development, which will only result in a financial contribution towards affordable housing being clawbacked if the applicant's assertions about viability of the scheme prove incorrect. The Council has a duty to secure as close to policy compliant affordable housing contributions as the viability of the scheme would allow. Officers are therefore seeking confirmation from members as to whether they agree that the Section 106 agreement should include 340,000 for public transportation required by the Highway Authority. This was previously not agreed by the applicant. However, Essex County Council have objected, and so the applicant has agreed to include it. The inclusion of a late-stage viability review mechanism to justify the affordable housing, in order to claw back any financial contribution towards the provision of policy compliant affordable housing once the actual costs of the development are realised. It should be noted that the applicant has not agreed to this and instead wants a review mechanism to be triggered only if within 6 months of the decision date no development has commenced. And finally, the provision of delegated authority to officers to negotiate and agree any conditions and/or Section 106 obligations required as a result of the members' resolution. This includes the requirement for a cascade tie clause within the Section 106 to require that first preference be given to local people for occupation of the affordable homes, the donation of 30 trees to Northfield Parish Council, and the library contributions to be ring-fenced to either Epping or Northfield libraries, and trigger points within the Section 106 being adjusted to ensure enforceability. This includes play space being provided prior to the occupation of 75% of the dwellings and parish council office being provided prior to the occupation of 50% of the proposed dwellings. Thank you, Chairman. That's the end of my presentation. I'll keep the resolution up for members' information. Sorry, the sound seems to have gone.
Okay.
I'll just come back. Thank you.
I've got it.
I do apologise. Sorry, I do apologise. Again, so you have 3 minutes to state your
Thank
case.
you very much, Mr. Chairman. I will be extremely brief. We don't object in principle to the development as such, but I also represent, by the way, the residents at Savannah, which are our next door neighbours, and I am from the Shrubbery. So as you can appreciate, we are surrounded on all sides by new developments. Rosaria opposite us on the high road, and the developments which are being proposed towards the back. Now, I'm concerned about the possible access that there might be between Savannah and our property, because as you appreciate, Savannah have a shared ownership of that driveway, and they vociferously object, as I do, to having cars or pedestrians going up and down, which will infringe very much on our privacy and our security as well, because our gardens at those points are open for everyone to see. They can look straight into our rooms, ours to the side, theirs to the front. So that's really all I would like to say about our objection. Everything else, I appreciate that there will be conditions regarding safety from the highways and infrastructure. I appreciate that all this is potentially being hopefully provided for, and I don't object to that, providing we have those conditions in place, but we certainly do object to the access point. So I'd like this to be clarified, whether this is intended to be the access point to the high road or whether somewhere else is proposed. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Can we clarify that before we proceed? Is that the only access onto that side? Suki?
Yes, it's the only access at the moment. You have to wait until the highways works for the new access.
Right, thank you. We now have a...
On the plans put up earlier,
it shows another access point on the southern end of the drawing. Do you want to go back a couple of...
Yeah.
I've actually got, you've done my screen no favours.
So this would be a new access, and this is the existing access that they're concerned about. So it's in the ownership of the applicants, and Savannah have right of access over it.
Right.
So the actual entrance is going to be
Down, further down.
Down there, so that's the one that contention.
Yeah. No. Okay, thank you. Right, we have a representative of the Town Council, Sue DeLusa. Is she on?
Close.
Huh?
Good evening,
sorry.
members. Northwood Bassett Parish Council is pleased to be able to attend again here this evening to speak on the application that is currently under consideration. In recent months, we've seen firsthand how GS8 have worked closely with the Parish Council and local residents and have tried to listen to the community concerns. They have shown commitment to ensuring that the development fits in with the interests of Thornwood after the site was first allocated in the local plan. From the outset, GS8 have demonstrated a desire to engage with the Parish Council and the local community. They've taken the time to meet with the Council and to attend our meetings, listen to feedback and consider the concerns raised by local residents. What's particularly commendable is how responsive they have been in terms of listening to what the Parish Council said, and at the last Plans East meeting, they adjusted their relative percentages accordingly in view of the Parish Council's concerns. In the spirit of collaboration, they have adjusted their plans based on the feedback provided during discussions with both EFDC councillors and planners and Parish Council representatives. At a time when development can sometimes feel disconnected from the people it affects, it's important to acknowledge when a developer goes that extra mile. While some concerns still remain, it is accepted this is a state-of-the-art sustainable development. We feel fortunate to have this developer working in such a constructive and forward-thinking way. They have demonstrated a level of respect and consideration for the parish, and it speaks volumes about their commitment to building responsibly and also sustainably. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. We have the agent, Ben Spencer. Again, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Chair. We're pleased that members resolved to approve the application in the September committee and appreciated the benefits of our sustainable and community-led housing product will bring to the district. As a business, we have strong ties to Thornwood, having established a base there for our construction business over 3 years ago. We've worked closely with local community to shape the proposals. Hopefully testament to our commitment to this approach is that we've received over 40 letters of support. This engagement has led to the inclusion of a grocery store and cafe in the development, along with a permanent office space for Northfield Parish Council. Since the September committee, we further agreed that in addition to the 40% on-site biodiversity net gain, we will provide 30 more trees to the Parish Council for planting elsewhere in the parish, and a commitment to give priority to existing residents in the parish who need affordable housing to be secured through the Section 106 and referenced as parish homes in the resolutions. Additionally, since the September committee, we've also agreed to approximately £600,000 worth of additional contributions towards infrastructure and education, taking our total contributions to over £3 million. And by comparison, that's over 25% more per dwelling than the Rosario development opposite. Lisa Vann of neighbouring Brookfield has asked me to express her support for how we've approached and engaged with residents and to urge the Council to ensure these substantial contributions are spent making improvements to the local infrastructure, support growth in Thornwood and complement this exciting scheme. Alongside the wider sustainability credentials of the scheme, this development will be the first scheme globally to provide a microgrid zero bills guarantee, meaning that anyone living on the development will have no energy bills guaranteed. We welcome the resolutions put forward tonight by officers to further enhance the benefits this scheme can provide towards local services, infrastructure, affordable housing and more. As a local business undertaking the construction of this project ourselves, we're ready for an immediate start once hopefully the planning permission is approved, and look forward to delivering a groundbreaking scheme that delivers far-reaching benefits and sets a new benchmark for high-quality sustainable development in Epping Forest and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you. Ward councillors, Councillor Bedford.
Thank you. Very pleased to be here this evening to be able to speak up a second time. After the first one, we managed to, it was approved. We are here because of a technical reason, and I just point out to the members of the committee that this is one of the most innovative type of designs, very experimental, very forward-thinking, energy-efficient designs, and I think we should be privileged to actually having it come to Epping Forest. There were previous concerns around Rosario and the traffic management, but I know that GSA have been working with residents. They've been working with especially the residents at Brookfield, because at one time officers actually, one of the officers wanted that development to come through Brookfield and link up. That was strongly resisted by the residents in Brookfield, and it was felt that that shouldn't happen. That was taken on board, and a complete revised design and build and traffic structure was put in place to mitigate those risks. Then when we raised the issue about the trees that were being planted that would get to 5 years of age as soon as they touch the buildings and chop the trees down, GSA obviously worked with the parish council to resolve that, and we have the additional trees, which will be a longer life tree because it's going to be planted and actually grow to maturity. Pleased now also that officers are at the point of just getting the Section 106 stuff ratified, and looking at this development going forward. I hope that we see more developments like this in the future, which aim to beat some of the problems that we've got with sustainability and transport issues that are often raised around developments regarding 100+ houses when we have issues with cars in and out of the site. So I welcome this development in its entirety and thank not only the developers, also the parish council and also the residents that live around that area. In fact, I bumped into the recent people that have moved out of Tudor House in Hyonga the other day, and they were extremely pleased that they could see the development now coming forward. So I'm not going to say any more than that, but I fully support this development. Thank you.
And yes, it is a case of deja vu here, but it's a good case to talk about again because it is an interesting one, and quite frankly, it's a fun. It's got some fun elements to it, and I echo a lot of what Councillor Bedford has just said, particularly in relation to how considerate the developers have been in terms of their public engagement and consultation process. They've been ecologically and environmentally proactive and in assessing the impact of the development, but it also offers some things that, as Councillor Bedford has said, are innovative in our district. So a car club, electric vehicle charging points, a place-based strategy, a community centre and cafe, which, as Councillor Sharif, you'll be aware, Thornwood is lacking that community centre since its 2 pubs have gone. 0 energy bills in each house for 5 years, and it also promotes walking, even though the roads around Thornwood are dangerously unsafe at the moment. But parking that, there were one particular issue as a result of the session we had back in September, I think the 18th of September, which I'm not particularly happy with. And it relates to S106 agreements. It's not parish homes, because I think that's a brilliant concept, and I think the conditions attached to that are good. It's not the donation of trees. It relates to one very small word, and that is the word "or," and that relates to Epping or North Weald Library. Now, I don't see why North Weald is not the recipient of the full amount of funds from that S106 agreement, because I don't think it's a fair allocation. Epping has benefited from a tremendous amount of investment over the years, credit to its councillors as its champions, including Councillor Sharif. It's had a new leisure centre and a swimming pool costing 33 million, a new library new library suggested to be in these offices here, a new car park for 330 vehicles, and there is word of a new 3-screen cinema as well. North Weald has not received that sort of investment, unfortunately. The only thing that it has seen is, 52 acres of our airfield sold. Now, what I would want the committee to consider is whether North Weald is deserving of that full amount of the S106 monies, particularly given we are meant to be expected to take on a minimum of 1,050 new homes, an 84% increase, with no supporting measures to accommodate this increased population. Our GP surgery is already struggling. People are worried about school places. And if we are also considering where the funds should go in terms of the nearest library, North Weald Library from this development is 2,860 metres away as the crow flies in a straight direction. Epping is 3,130 metres. It's part of the same parish, it's part of the same district ward, and it's soon to be part of the county ward, as I'm sure Councillor Chris Whitbread is very aware. So I don't know whether it is appropriate, Chair, to suggest amendment to the existing condition that the money goes straight, all the money, or at least the vast majority of the money goes to North Weald Library, as opposed to 50-50 split between Epping and North Weald, or just to Epping. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whitbread.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. As I formerly used to cover Thornwood and have been actively engaged over many years with the local plan process and obviously the Thornwood sites in particular, and making sure that from a county council perspective in particular, we got the highways improvements that are much needed in North Weald, whether that's ends with us getting a 30-mile-per-hour zone through the village and reducing some of the problems that we have on the road along that stretch. I think this development is part of that process of resolving some of these issues, as well as being an excellent development for the benefit of the future of the village, and particularly for local people seeking local homes. I think that's really important. Bearing in mind it's Essex County Council's policies that have retained libraries in small villages across Essex, I think that should be applauded. Where the Section 106 money goes on the libraries, obviously I'd like to see it invested in North Weald because it is a smaller, older library, and of course we are hoping that the Epping Library will eventually move into the civic offices. That's an ongoing negotiation, but irrelevant to this really, because the 106 monies should go to North Weald or Thornwood, or where it's thought to go to the best usage for the area. That goes without saying. I disagree with the politics that Councillor Bromwich has tried to bring in, because whenever we've raised money in North Weald has actually benefited, and we can go back to the HMRC hub with that, where North Weald got an additional 40,000. But of course, if you attended council meetings and cabinet meetings on a regular basis, you would know some of the great things that have been done across Epping Forest for the benefit of all.
Thank you. Members, Councillor Bassett.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of little things. We've now clarified, I think it's condition 17, there will be a new entrance to the site in the southwest corner. The condition is the existing one is very tight, very narrow. What will happen to that after the development? Because if people find, oh, well, I think I'll use that one, and then these poor people are going to have a queue of cars outside their house, is that going to be withdrawn? And the second part is I would obviously support Councillor Bromwich there in his request and would make forward that as a motion. I don't know if I've got any support. Yes. Yeah.
Suki, can you answer that?
Yes.
Regarding the...
So it's a secondary route. So the main route and the easiest road to navigate would be the Priority Junction route. So that access still will be there, but it would be used much less frequently because of the size and width of the road.
Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. My concern is also on the condition 17, it says here prior to the first occupation, so that obviously means the development is going to be built out. All the construction traffic is going to be going on this narrow road past the gentleman's house who's here with us this evening and his neighbour. I don't think that is suitable at all. I've got no issue with the development whatsoever. I've got no issue with North Weald having all the money for the library. All I would like to see is a change on 17. I think that entrance to the south needs to be put in first. The development works need to be done via that entrance, and that needs to be the sole entrance in and out of the property. So if we could, if we can get some guidance from Suki or from Graham on whether we can condition that, as that would be helpful, please.
Would you want the existing construction management plan to be removed from the drawing list and an additional condition put in to provide details of the construction management plan to show the use of for that construction road being installed first prior to the construction works being undertaken?
Yeah, that's it, exactly. Is that possible, yes? That condition can be...
The light... Sorry, I'll let Suki speak.
Yeah,
Propose it, I'll second.
Can I propose?
Yeah,
can I
we have a
propose
proposal
the
to that? I couldn't
condition
catch what you were
that the, as Suki outlined, a new construction management plan is put forward so that the works is carried out through the new southern entrance.
And seconder? In favour?
Can I just come in a moment, just to just so that we're clear, that is an amendment to condition 17?
That's it,
Yeah.
Chairman, yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just a point, does that mean that the other access will be blocked for any of the site traffic?
So we would seek details. If you would want that to be blocked, then we would include it in the condition. I'm just going to quickly go down and look at the wording of condition 17 just to make sure that it is doable. Just bear with me. Sorry, I've just got on the wrong page. So this condition is actually not, this condition is the installation of the
Display access.
highway works,
Yeah.
but the construction works would be separate from that and would be carried out prior to the works being undertaken. So you wouldn't actually need a new condition for just the construction management of the access. So if they can provide details of the how the construction will be managed, and within that condition, details shall include what access will be used and when, and then, and what they're going to do to the existing smaller access.
Councillor Matthews.
Chair, that was a very confusing
Change that word.
response. For me, I just want it clear that the construction and the use of the site is used via the access to the south, and that construction traffic does not go through the existing route between the two properties. However that is done, I don't think we need to specify. We just, that's what needs to be written, that that road is not to be used, and the southern entrance is to be used at construction phase, and then...
We're going to change that prior to first.
Yeah, as I understand it, condition 17 has got nothing to do with access, it's to do with the highways alterations.
So there's two steps that have been taken. So you would want the access to be, the proposed access which is the priority junction, to be used both for construction and for once the development is completed. So therefore I suggest two conditions. One for, so I delete the construction management plan from the drawing list, and I put another condition on requiring updated construction management details, and in addition I add to condition 17 that this is the only access into the site.
Councillor Bassett.
Sorry, there's one thing there on condition 17, which therefore is still wrong. It says, prior to the first occupation of the development, the access arrangements. That now needs to change, so it's like the access arrangements need to be done prior to development.
Yeah, so that's why there's two. So the construction management plan condition details to be provided will contain within it, once the information is submitted, details of the new access being built first, and then the construction traffic using that route only, and then condition 17 can be updated to require that only that route be used, and the access route as is currently be not used by residents. I wonder if the Highway Authority has any comments to make, if that's acceptable or not.
Actually, oh, sorry, Suki, just before we come in, because I must admit, even I'm getting slightly confused here, but I think I understand what members are after. So members don't want construction traffic using the existing access, which goes right past this gentleman's house, understandably so. So what the suggestion is that construction traffic shall use the new access point. We don't necessarily need all of the work carried out under condition 17, because that would be to make it fully compliant with highways, and that's obviously when it's a fully operational highway. Actually, as a site access, it probably, I mean, Matt may be able to confirm this, but it probably wouldn't need the full suite of works. The only thing I did wonder, because there is a lot of confusion, I didn't know if the chairman might want to just actually go to the applicant and just ask what the intention is, because they might just be able to clarify what the current intention is, and then members can decide whether they're happy with that or whether actually they want a tighter restriction, because obviously they are here. They could probably quickly clarify.
I can certainly do that, Mr. Courtney. Have you got an answer to that, Ben, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I might be able to clear this all up very simply. So the approved CMP that's part of the application actually does specify that all construction heavy-duty vehicles and all construction traffic actually, for that matter, will come through the southern access off the field. And the reason being is there's an existing gate and access that's already there as part of when the field was used for commercial purposes. So when we engaged with the necessary departments within Epping Forest, that was what drove the decision to make that the sole construction access. So it's already dealt with in the approved CMP. In respect to the northern access, which is the current access to Tudor House, as part of the application, we propose that that's solely a pedestrian and cycle access, and not for vehicles whatsoever as any kind of secondary access.
Does that satisfy our quandary on that? Councillor Bassett.
We also wanted a slight change about the library.
Yeah, are you proposing that?
Yes.
Seconded, Councillor Matthews. So all those in favour of all the money going to Northfield Library?
Unanimous.
Thank you. Right then, members, the officer's recommendation is to approve with delegated authority the conditions and amendments, and subject to section 106 legal agreement as amended by and as necessary. All those in favour?
Unanimous.
Thank you. Say that again.
Sorry, Chairman, just one thing, sorry. I know we've just voted on the approval. I just want to clarify, because we don't want to be in a situation we were in last time where it was an ambiguous decision. Not looking at you, Councillor Bedford, there, don't worry. One of the questions in there is about the clawback, whether the clawback clause should be included. Obviously, officers have suggested it should be. The applicant obviously would rather it not be. I think it'd be sensible to get a decision from members as to whether that should be included or not.
So are members minded then to approve the application with all the proposed resolutions by officers to this application? Yeah, so in favour?
Unanimous.
Thank you. Does that clarify that for our legal? Right, thank you. Where are we now? I should know this off by now. Right?
We're finished.
Yeah, right. So is there any other business?
I've not been made aware of any other business.
Right, thank you. I therefore close this meeting at 21:46.
Gosh, that clock's right.